concerns about the nature of the program being put in place in New York?
I would say that on the issue of regulation around what that information is used for, we're largely moving into very uncharted territory in terms of just the volume of information that the state will have and that private actors will have that sometimes man these cameras. And there is a real need to develop safeguards around when that information can be reviewed and by whom. Second of all, there's a lot of confusion around who can record what and who can disseminate what in this kind of uncharted territory of filmed information. So if we go back to the case of the cellular phones just for a second, nobody's quite sure of who's allowed to film a police officer in particular places at particular times. In the United Kingdom, for example, it's illegal to film a police officer who is involved in counter-terror activities. Now, what exactly does that mean? It could mean pretty much anything. Here in Canada, you are allowed to film a police officer if a police officer wishes your cell phone after you've filmed. They need a warrant.
Filming is not the right word, but recording on their cell phone, something that they were seeing. Would you advise them ever to hand that over to the police, if asked?
If asked, I mean, there's a lot of different schools of thought on that, but I mean, it is your property and you have filmed something. If you have filmed something that you believe is criminal or something that could be useful for evidence, you should indicate to a police officer that you intend to retain and preserve that film for evidence, and you should at a later time turn it over to a lawyer or to a police officer who wasn't involved in the particular instance that you did videotape.
Okay,
that would be my advice.
Bill McCormick, the safeguards that were referred to earlier, there are cameras now potentially put up in New York, certainly all over the place. Here in Toronto we have some. I'm wondering about how concerned you are about the safeguards behind those, how the information is used, who can use it, when they, the issues of privacy around all of that. Do you have any concerns around that?
Yes, there's no question at all about it. That there are many concerns, and of course the courts have ruled on it on a few occasions, and I believe you have a ruling from the Supreme Court of Canada, right in this document, as a matter of fact, in relation to, not directly, but indirectly, how this kind of evidence can be used and should be used in terms of the prosecution of an offender and so on. But yes, there's no question at all about it that we all have concerns about privacy. But where are we here? Are we looking at privacy, or are we looking at safety in terms of the public, in terms of the crime that undoubtedly has risen quite substantially in all of our cities?
Sounds like we're looking at both.
Well, let's look at both. And let's look at the police in between. And let me tell you now, I assure you of this, that one of the things that you have to be very guarded about is that you have policing that does the job properly, by all means, and that the morale of those police officers, the equipment of those police officers, and the look that they have from their public works together. Sir Robert Peel said the police are the public and the public are the police. It hasn't changed since 1865.
Okay, he said it back then, but do you think the public believes that today?
Well, they should. And I can assure you, it's been my experience in Toronto that the public, generally speaking, do believe.
John Sewell, do you agree with that?
Sometimes they do and sometimes they don't. But, it's the old thing. It depends on the facts or in the situation. I mean, I think the point that's being made is there's a lot of questions that are being asked. And maybe we should be proceeding very, very slowly. I mean, Toronto is not in the position of New York. I mean, we've got 25 cameras and they're trying to figure out whether they continue them and maybe have another 25 more. So it's nothing like what's happening in New York. And in fact, the Toronto police are consulting with the Privacy Commission to try and sort things out. But I think the point is that it's not clear that in fact having cameras in public places actually helps anything at all. It does spend public money, but maybe that public money would be better spent in other ways. And so I think we have to proceed very, very carefully with this notion. And of course, not answered, as you've made clear, is who gets to use this data? Is it only the police who gets to use these data? Or should the public get to use it as well? Should the public get to control it? So the police shouldn't be allowed to control it just on their own, surely. Exposing that the cameras show something that the police are doing that's wrong. The police get to destroy it themselves? No. So, and they're unanswered questions. So the point is that we should be proceeding very, very, very carefully.
Raymond Foster, given that example that I said a moment or two ago, where a citizen on the street, in a perfectly legitimate way, records something on his or her cell phone, and then a police officer who perhaps was making the arrest at the time comes up and asks that person for that cell phone a moment later, what should that person do?
You know, I would tell the police officer to get a warrant, quite frankly. And I'm not willing to give up any right that I have under the Constitution to maybe seemingly facilitate an investigation, or just because I don't think I've done anything wrong. I would at the very least say something like, you know, I would prefer to give it to your supervisor, so why don't you have that person come and then get a receipt if you want to do that. Or say, you know what, I'll make a copy for you and we can download it over there at the, you know, they're everywhere, the copy shops where you can make copies or use a computer or something like that. I wouldn't give up something that I own or that I took just because somebody asked me for it.
And many of us are trained, however, to, when a cop tells you to do something, you do it. And would it not be a pretty gutsy citizen who was able to look at a police officer who may be 6 foot 2 inches tall holding a gun, saying, now, you know what, get a warrant and I'm going to go make a copy of this for you. Is that realistic?
Well, you know, in 24, 25 years, and a lot of that time in the street, I'm surprised to hear that everyone's been trained to do what the police tell them to do, because that's certainly not and if somebody pulls a gun on you and asks you to give that up, well, yeah, you give it up to them, because there's something else going on there. But what we're talking about is you're filming something, and this has happened. It was right after Rodney King happened in Los Angeles. Everybody was filming the police and watching it, and we had many times, I was a young sergeant then, and I was called out to the field because the cops wanted to get a copy of the tape. And the citizens didn't want to give it up. And you know what? The tape didn't have anything on it. They were just taping the police. That's because it was new. Now we kind of know. They've got cameras. We've got cameras. We didn't do anything wrong. You know, the tape's not going to help. And if we want a copy of it, we can ask them for it. We can give them a receipt for it. The police demanding something from you, I would be skeptical of just giving it up. I'd at least want a receipt. I'd at least want to speak to a supervisor.
Christopher Dunn in New York. Sorry, go ahead, finish the thought.
No, that's fine.
Okay,
I'm good.
Christopher Dunn well, here in Toronto the Good, we were always taught growing up that when a cop tells you to do something or asks you for something, you shut up and do it. Now, New York City might be a bit of a different experience. If somebody under those same circumstances in New York caught something on tape that maybe could be a little bit on the borderline, and the cop came up to you afterwards and said, give that over, what would you do?
Well, what would I do? I would not give it to the person. But, I mean, you're absolutely right. You know, when a police officer asks someone to do something, most people are going to feel a lot of pressure to do it. We are constantly talking to people who've had encounters with the police where, against their judgment, they've done something they wouldn't have otherwise done because it's a cop asking them, and that's a human reaction. But I'm happy to hear the police representatives saying that they should be standing on their constitutional rights and should be hanging on to stuff. That's certainly what we advise people to do, obviously to a point of reason. If an officer is pointing a weapon at you, you give them the camera, there's no question about it. But if what we're dealing with is a typical street encounter where a police officer asks to have a cell phone or a video camera, the person should certainly not give it to the police. If they want to be helpful in terms of an investigation, there are lots of ways to do that. But giving them to the officer on the scene, particularly if there's a concern about misconduct by the officer, would be a mistake.
Christopher Dunn, in terms of your experience with New York City, what's your view on this explosion of technology and how it may have, or what it's done to the relationship between the public and the police?
Well, our major concern is that the explosion of technology, and particularly the notion of burgeoning video systems in public spaces, is that it is erasing the line between the police and law-abiding citizens. I mean, from the beginning of time, police have focused on unlawful activity. They focus on the bad guys. And we are now moving to a regime in which the police are now going to be focusing indiscriminately on everybody. and everybody's gonna end up in a police database, and everyone's gonna be subject to analysis, and everyone's gonna be subject to abuse. And that completely revolutionizes the relationship between the police and most of the public. And we think it's a very dangerous thing, and it's a particularly dangerous thing when these systems are going up without any real thought into the design of the systems, without any privacy protections, without any regulation. It just is bringing about a revolutionary and dangerous change in the relationship between the police and the public.
Bill McCormick,